Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time for another weekly wrap-up. It is Monday yet again, and I have a lot of stuff to talk about today, but I want to first thank our newest Patreon supporters, Yule, I love the single name Patreon supporters, William Yelon and Marco Cordero. I want to thank all of you for your generous contributions to the channel, and probably within the next week or so, once we flip over to September, I will update the credits at the end of every video, so you'll see your names lit up there as we get closer to the month of September. I might make that end cap a little longer because that scrolling thing is going by really fast now. I want to make sure everyone gets at least their 1 or 2 seconds of fame at the end of each video. So what did we do in the past week? Well, we did a bunch of stuff. The first thing is I took a look at the retro USB AVS again, and this time looked at its scoreboard system. This is probably one of the coolest gadgets I have seen so far this year. It is basically a reimagined Nintendo Entertainment System and Famicom game console that allows you to play your Nintendo games in HD on your television, and it's not all that expensive. There is another one out there now from Lon.TV. I think it's about $400 or so. So this one's certainly a lot less expensive than the Analog offering. Analog's version, though, does go up to 1080p, but for me, on 8-bit graphics, 720p is fine. I've got another video or two I'll probably do on this one. I especially want to look at how the 4K video looks, or at least find a way to show you how it looks, and cover some of the firmware updates that are coming down on this ahead of its official release, probably in about the next week or two. So stay tuned. That will be coming soon. I also looked at the Voyo VBook V3. It is an affordable Ultrabook 2-in-1 device running with an Atom Cherry Trail processor. I had some of the same issues with its Windows license as I did with the Voyo Mini PC I looked at a couple of months ago. So check that out and take a look at what a low-cost PC will get you. Even though it looks more expensive, it isn't really all that great in the quality control department. We also looked at the Qnap TS251A. This is a network-attached storage device from Qnap, very similar to one I looked at a year ago, but they added direct USB connectivity to it, and that kind of violates the laws of network-attached storage physics, that you can actually connect a computer to it directly, but this one lets you do it. They came up with a really clever trick for doing that, so you can check out that review and see some of its virtualization capabilities too in that one. And yesterday we opened up the Action Tech ECB 6200s, and these are MOCA adapters that allow you to use your cable television wires as Ethernet, so you can run your cable network as your computer network without interfering with your TV signal too. Really cool product. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these during the Q&A in a minute. Probably the best way, in my opinion, to give yourself a network extension without having to run dedicated Ethernet cable. These are the most reliable things that I have ever tested, both this one and the prior generation version of that product. Better than Powerline, better than Wi-Fi, really good. And if you're looking for a quick and easy fix to your network extension woes, a MOCA adapter is definitely going to do that for you. So now let's talk about what's on my mind this week. And unfortunately, it is still Comcast. I'm still struggling with my network problems here at the house. It's nothing severe in the sense that my internet is not down for long lengths of time, but it's down for like 5 or 10 seconds or so at a time, and it happens intermittently throughout the day, more so during the workday. And I work from home a couple days a week now, and I need a very good solid connection to my office. I use a remote desktop to get into my work computers, and that's very susceptible to packet loss, because if I'm moving my mouse or clicking on something and that click doesn't register, it gets very frustrating. And this still is happening all the time during the day. And I wonder if this is Comcast's way of trying to push me into a more expensive business product, but I'm still giving them the riot act. Hopefully they'll fix the problem. And this is one of those examples of when you have a lack of competition, what happens. I've got nowhere to go. This is the only service provider I can use reasonably here at my house, and I am quite frustrated, and there really isn't much of a motivation on Comcast's side to fix this problem. It's not an easy problem to solve, because it's probably something very intricately broken somewhere that allows my service to work all the time, except those little blips here or there that it knocks it out of commission. It's going to take some time for them to find this, and unfortunately they haven't yet got to the bottom of it, and I'm getting more and more frustrated by the day. And now it's time for our Q&A segment. I've got an epic one at the end, but we'll start with the easier questions first. And Export Seeker and Mr. WMac wrote in asking about my favorite network-attached storage devices at the moment, whether or not I like Synology or Qnap better. And for me, I'm still a Synology user. I do like what Qnap has done. Qnap has actually come a long way in the last couple of years, especially in getting their interface spruced up, because when I first started looking at Qnap drives, Synology was light years ahead of them in interface and some some basic features, and Qnap has really caught up to the point where I would put them almost neck and neck at the top tier. And this is another example of how hardware has become so commoditized, because both of these devices now are largely running with the same exact processors, these Intel Braswell chips or similar ARM chips. So really it's a matter of how they're implementing their software on there. But I've been very happy with Synology. In fairness, they have been a sponsor on the channel in the past, but I was using them before they became a sponsor. And I think you just get into your groove with a certain product, and that's what you get used to. But I'm really quite impressed with what Qnap has put together. Qnap often has some features that are kind of aimed more at the multimedia set, especially if you're looking for a Plex server. They do have Qnap NAS drives that are running with like i5 processors. So if you really want to get your Plex server running on a NAS, that might be one solution, because you can do all of your transcoding on there. They also have HDMI outputs, as you saw in our review this week too. So they are starting to focus a lot on the heavy consumer users, and Synology hasn't really focused on that market as much as they do the business market and basic NAS functionality. But I'm still a Synology user and plan to probably stay that way for a while, just because I have so much data on my Synology NAS. To move it all off will be kind of a burden at this point. I'm still very happy with what they've put together. They're very good about updating security. This is both companies, actually. They're always pushing down updates. They're staying on top of a lot of vulnerabilities that are coming out in open source software. A few of them have had, I think Synology had a close call with some malware a while back, so they've been very much on the ball, pushing down updates constantly to keep their systems safe and secure. So I'm really quite pleased with the competition between the two of them, and they are really making each other better, which has been really fun to watch there. Probably not fun to be in their companies competing, but fun for me as the guy that covers all this stuff to talk about that. Saturn Otaku here had a good question about the MOCA adapters and game streaming, and I'm going to probably do a follow-up video with that to just show that, but I think it should work well as a game streaming device because these things are really having a very reliable connection over that coax cable in your home, more so than you would get with power line adapters. So I haven't seen any drop packets. As you saw, we were getting gigabit speeds. There's a little slight amount of latency that you'll get, about 3 milliseconds more than Ethernet. I don't think that's enough to really mess up a game, but it will give slightly more latency than just the straight Ethernet connection might. So it's still going to be better than Wi-Fi, but not as good as Ethernet in the latency department. We'll definitely test that when I do that video in the next couple of weeks. I got so much stuff that I want to do and so little time to do it in, but hopefully I'll get to that because it interests me also. I'd love to see the differences there. He also asked about the filter on the MOCA adapter for keeping your network kind of isolated to your home. So what I'm going to do here is a little visual example of that. Let me pull up my second camera. I'm going to step away from the desk for a second here, if you don't mind, and we'll switch over to my other room here. This is my little utility closet. And what you'll do to get that filter installed is go where the cable outlet is coming into your home. So this wire here is coming in from the street. It goes into this splitter. This one goes to my cable modem, and this one goes over to all of my television stuff. And what you want to do is put that filter right here where that signal comes in. So what will happen is that MOCA stuff will stay all the way in your network up to the splitter, and then it won't get past that. So that adapter just kind of sits in the middle there, and you're safe to go. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those filters yet, but that's where you would install it, right at the demarcation point where your cable comes into the house. And a lot of people wrote in with some confusion about the topology of a MOCA network. So let me just show you the differences between how Ethernet works versus how your home cable television wiring works. So typically in an Ethernet network, you have your internet coming in from off the street. It goes into a modem, whether it's a cable modem or a DSL modem, and then it gets connected to your router, as you can see in this crappy diagram I put together. And then the router connects to individual computers directly. So if I have a computer plugged into my network, like my little laptop is here right now, this laptop is connected to a wall jack that has a wire dedicated to it running all the way back to my equipment room in there where it's plugged into an Ethernet switch. So there is a direct connection essentially between this computer and the hub over there. It just plugs right in. So every jack on your network has to have a wire going all the way back to the source. But cable television works differently. It works like one big loop. So you have your cable TV coming off of the street here, and then it just gets looped around your entire house. And what's cool about this from a MOCA perspective is that you can put your MOCA devices anywhere in this loop. So it doesn't have to be next to your router. If you have a room where you have an Ethernet jack going back to your router, for example, and a television cable jack in that same room, you could plug that MOCA adapter in there, even if it's across the house from where the cable modem and router is located, because as long as they're on that loop, you can get data over it because it just kind of circles the whole house constantly, and you can get things connected. So that's how I was setting it up earlier, in that I did have one one down here, but then I had another one on the other end of the house, but they're all on the same cable television loop. So any cable jack that you can get to that has enough signal strength will work just fine in this arrangement, because it is a big loop versus a bunch of independent connections going back. And that is why I found MOCA to be so flexible. It's a really cool concept and a very good alternative, as I mentioned, to other solutions that might be out there. So our next question comes in from UK Airscape, and he was wondering why the fair use provisions don't apply to video game footage, or appear not to. And this question was asked in regards to something I brought up on the wrap-up last week, because I had the retro USB AVS console in for that review. I was posting some game footage on my secondary channel. One of the games that I posted was one of my favorite Nintendo games, Contra, on the NES, and Konami, in about 5 minutes after that video was uploaded, put a copyright claim on it. They didn't take the video down, but they are denying my ability to monetize that video. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be a lot of money, because it's only going to get a couple hundred views probably, but this is the kind of stuff that a lot of game reviewers are dealing with on a regular basis, with Konami and Nintendo in particular, the most draconian in their attack of independent content creators here on the YouTube platform. And this is partly why I don't cover Nintendo products all that often, because they are so brutally awful to independent creators doing this kind of behavior. But what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about fair use, but a lot about the copyright laws and the terms of service that YouTube is operating under, and the things that I have to abide by as an independent creator. I think you might find this interesting, because a lot of people have talked about fair use on the internet before, but not a lot of people have talked about the laws behind it. So in a nutshell, fair use should allow anyone to do a product review of a video game and be able to use that footage without the permission of the content holder. And there's a lot of legal ladders you have to climb to be able to make the case that your use of that content is fair use. But in many cases, I think a lot of people are being very unfairly targeted by some of these algorithms that look for copyrighted content. And unfortunately, a lot of independent creators don't have the means or the knowledge of how to appeal those things. But I want to talk about the law here, at least as I understand it. I'm not a lawyer, but I wanted to give you a quick breakdown here. So back in 1996, when I was still in college 20 years ago, the United States Congress here in the U.S. passed the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA, and it's a groundbreaking piece of legislation that really formed the foundation for how media works in this century. This has been the law of the land for 20 years. This is what everyone operates under, and it put the burden of proof, in my opinion. Somebody may disagree with this, because this is a very controversial law, as everything is these days. It puts the burden, I think, more so on the rights holders than the creators. And let me show you what I mean by that. So the DMCA created something called safe harbor. So YouTube is a platform. They don't control directly what I upload. So when I upload this video tonight, nobody at YouTube is moderating this and deciding whether or not it's suitable for their platform or not. It just goes up, and if there's a problem, they take it down later, usually. And because they're operating under that model of non-editorializing the content, then they have essentially a safe harbor against lawsuits for copyright. There are some exceptions to that, which is what will lead to my next point, but generally they're under safe harbor, which means that if a rights holder decides that something on their platform shouldn't be there because it's their property, they can file a takedown notice to the platform, and then they will remove the content. But the content creator, me, has an ability to appeal that through a counterclaim on the DMCA. And when I do that, the actual platform has to put the content back up. So if I file a counterclaim, the platform needs to reinstate the content within 14 days of receipt of that counter notice, unless I'm already being sued. So if I file the counter notice, and then let's say Disney comes after me or Konami comes after me for the content again, if they file a lawsuit within that 2-week period of time, then the content will stay down. But if there's no lawsuit filed, the platform is obligated to put that content back up. It takes a lawsuit to get it pulled down again, generally, and that you may wonder why it doesn't happen on YouTube, and I'll get to that, but that's how it's supposed to work. So again, the remedy here is the lawsuit. If they don't file the lawsuit, the content doesn't get pulled down. If they do, it will be pulled down until the lawsuit is resolved. But there's consequences for abuse of this. So as a rights holder, if they, for example, if Konami comes after me and is abusive because maybe they've got some beef against me or something, they could be held liable for civil damages. I could sue them for lost revenue. I could sue them for all the other stuff that maybe pain and suffering or something. But they can also be guilty of perjury if they lied about the thing that they're putting up on the DMCA complaint. So this is a very formal document. It's a legal document where you're essentially making an oath that you're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And the same can be said, though, for the counterclaim. counterclaim. So if I have a claim against me and I counterclaim, I'm under those same consequences as well. So I could be responsible civilly as well as criminally for lying if I was filling out this form when I wasn't really the content owner. So there is some real consequences here, both for abusing the system and for people who violate copyright. And that doesn't really exist on the YouTube platform. So let's see what they did. So YouTube created a system called Content ID, and this is really putting the burden more on the content creator. And Content ID is an automated system that looks for violations and then gives the content owner some choices as to how they want to go about doing that. And I'll get into all the specifics of that in a second. But the reason why Content ID was created was because YouTube was being sued. A lot of these rights holders were challenging the DMCA law to say, look, it's just not reasonable for us to file lawsuits against every single person that's uploading all this content to YouTube. YouTube should bear some responsibility in trying to control their content. So the compromise that YouTube came up with was to say, all right, look, we'll add some things to our terms of service and create this system so that when people upload content, if we find violations of your work, we'll develop a way in which you can more effectively and efficiently get that content pulled down or something else along those lines. And so what they did is they created something that operates outside the DMCA. So a lot of the legal protections that I have under the DMCA, I don't have on the YouTube platform. And the reason is that I agreed to YouTube's terms of service. So in exchange for free hosting and the revenue sharing and all the great benefits that come with a YouTube subscription, or at least a YouTube user account, I also have to agree to abide by their rules. And one of their rules is that we're going to operate our own copyright system that doesn't give you all the same legal protections you might currently have under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So if I owned a website where I was posting this stuff to, the DMCA would be in more effect, but here on YouTube, it is not. And there's some real benefits to me for being on YouTube, because if I have my own website, I think only maybe 20 of you would actually visit it, maybe a little bit more, but only about a small handful of the 100,000 subscribers that I have would actually watch any of my content on a regular basis, because it's just not where they're going. So part of me being on the platform is I've got to agree to this. So it resides, again, out within terms of service and outside the DMCA, and I agree to abide by those terms of service. Now, rights holders can, though, if they find some content that they wish to claim ownership of, they do have more options here. So in the DMCA scenario, really your only option is to pull the content down. That's it. If the complaint comes in, the remedy is to pull the content down and leave it down. Content ID and YouTube's terms of service allow for some additional options. So one of those is that the rights holder can say, okay, that content can stay up, but we're going to take all their revenue. Or they could decide to pull the content down under Content ID if they wish, or they could allow it to remain up and just not allow it to be monetized. So right now, what's happening with my Konami video is that Konami has denied me monetization rights, but they haven't denied me the ability to put the content up. And this, in some ways, protects freedom of speech for people on YouTube, because although you can't make money on your content, this big bad corporation is not restricting my right to speech. So, it's six of one, half dozen of another. If you are an activist or somebody who really wants to make a point on something and using some copyrighted material to do so, in many cases, you won't see that video taken down. You'll just see that you lose the right to make money on it. And for some people, making money is not the primary objectives. But I think in the case of a journalist, we should be allowed to earn money, and these rights holders shouldn't have the ability to decide who makes money and who doesn't. And that's my biggest problem with the Content ID system right now. But this is kind of how this whole thing works. Now, there is an appeal process, and I can go through the Content ID system and make an appeal. However, unlike the DMCA, where the content gets automatically put back up after 14 days, the Content ID system means that content could be down or unmonetized for 30 days. And if the rights holder doesn't respond to my appeal within that 30-day period of time, then my rights are restored. But if you think about something timely like a news item, a rights holder could basically kill your ability to make any money on your content while it's still relevant. And I'll give you a great example of this. I do a lot of coverage of the space program, off and on here on the channel and through some other stuff that I do. And NASA gives away all of their video footage for free to news agencies, and anyone really. It's all public domain footage. But what happens is news agencies grab this footage, use it in their own newscasts. They upload those video samples into the Content ID system. It automatically gets flagged when I upload that same image, because it is public domain. And then if Fox News, for example, and this really did happen with Fox News, if they decide that, or nobody's keeping an eye on their Content ID appeals, they could just sit on it for 30 days, kill any kind of relevance that I have, and I lose 30 days of revenue in the process. And in the past, you never got that revenue back. It was only recently that YouTube changed its policies to create kind of an escrow where those monies are earned, and whoever wins the appeal essentially gets the money at the end of the process. So that is a nice improvement, because it does at least give you the ability, knowing that if you've got public domain footage and you shouldn't be held liable for it, at least you'll get your money back at the end of the day. Before, that wasn't the case. And this was only a very recent change to that. So there are 30 days there. Now, YouTube can decide that my content is legitimate, and they could reinstate it. And at that point, the rights holder can file the DMCA request. But I found is that, in my own experience, that when it's questionable as to whether or not fair use is at work here or not, YouTube often just decides not to get in the middle of it and just let it sit there. So if that happens and they don't reinstate the content, you're kind of out of luck, because they're not working within the DMCA. YouTube has decided that this is not appropriate for their platform based on their terms of service, and you're just done. Now, if for some reason YouTube does reinstate the content, or that rights holder goes to 30 days without responding and the content goes up, they can still file a DMCA complaint, and then you're going into that complaint, counterclaim, lawsuit thing if that is where they want to go with it. So it really is a pretty crazy process here. But Content ID, again, I think really puts the burden, sometimes unfairly, on the independent creator to prove that they actually have the right to use this content. And it's really becoming kind of a chilling effect, in the sense that I'm not producing content on certain companies because I know they are very draconian in their approach to this stuff, and I don't want to be bothered wasting my time and effort on reviewing something from Nintendo as a result. So I don't cover a lot of Nintendo because of that, and that kind of stinks. But that's just the way these things work these days. Now, consequences here. So in the DMCA instance, if somebody was doing something unfairly to me, I have some legal action I could take. They could be convicted of perjury, for example, and face some criminal charges as well. Not the same here on Content ID. There's been really zero evidence that I could find that YouTube has ever actively pursued terms of service violations against frequent abusers of the Content ID system. Again, those same legal penalties just don't exist under YouTube's terms of service as they do here. Now, I suppose a bunch of creators could get together and decide to sue as a big class action at some point, but we'd all have to be able to prove that we've lost a significant amount of money to justify that lawsuit. So it's really going to take, I think, a strength in numbers kind of thing, where enough people who've been, fall under this horrible system to stand up together and file some huge class action, probably against those who are filing these takedown requests. The problem is that even the large YouTubers, I don't think there's enough money there to really warrant a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And here's my biggest problem with all of this, is that there are a lot of well-meaning creators out there who've produced some really great content, who get these copyright flags and never do anything about it, and just give their money away, essentially. And I am sure there are millions of dollars unlawfully, in my opinion, flowing from these creators' accounts over to these rights holders because of this automated Content ID system that just flags stuff randomly, irrespective of whether or not the person has fair use to use the content. So it's a big problem, but at the same time, for me at least, there's a greater benefit to being on the YouTube platform than there isn't being on the YouTube platform, as I mentioned earlier. So I could not do this without YouTube, and this is one of those costs of doing business that you just have to accept, that there's going to be, every time you upload something, the chance that your content is going to get flagged. And YouTube's been trying to find ways to help creators. One of the biggest problems that I used to have was with some of the royalty-free music that I bought and had licenses to. Those were getting claimed all the time. So I started using YouTube's library when I do use music, and that has certainly helped out quite a bit. But it is a pretty crazy system, but that is really, in a nutshell, what we're dealing with here. And this is why it often seems unfair to the creator, because YouTube has slipped something in that really puts the burden back on the creator more so than the person that actually owns the copyright. And this is the struggle. And they did this because, again, they were getting sued, and they had to come up with some remedy to prevent their legal burden from being too heavy, because as they were getting sued, they were first getting started, and they were trying to get their feet wet into this new medium. And I think they just wanted to find some way to just get these record companies off their back. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are abusing it or using it improperly. And again, it's a darn shame that Nintendo, Konami, and many other companies are using this gameplay footage thing as a means of choosing who makes money and who doesn't, and it sucks. So that is my professional opinion on that. Now, in case I haven't put you to sleep yet, I do have a giveaway to announce, and this is going to start right now. So go to Lon.TV/enter. This one is open to international viewers. I finally found something I could give away on an international basis, and that comes with the help of Nvidia. So they're going to allow us to give away an Nvidia Shield TV console, a $200 value, and you can go to Lon.TV/enter, and if you live in any of these countries on the screen, you are eligible to participate. So what's going to happen here is your information is staying with me. I don't give it out to anybody, but the winner's address is going to go to Nvidia, and they're going to ship it out. So we have quite a number of countries covered here, and this is what I'm able to do for all of you. I will continually look for additional giveaway opportunities that will cover more countries than just the United States. So when we have these international giveaways, I will definitely let you know and let you know which countries are eligible to participate. Please follow your local laws and regulations. So if you're not allowed to participate in a giveaway in your country, don't do it. But these are the countries I can ship to, and hopefully the law of your country won't reach me here if I'm doing something incorrectly based on your giveaway laws. I am compliant with the U.S. laws. So Lon.TV/enter and put yourself into the running there. Now I have a Q&A for you, and I'm curious about merchandising because a lot of YouTubers are selling hats and t-shirts and all this other cool stuff, and I'm just curious if that's something you would ever buy if I had those things available. I have a friend locally here that does this kind of stuff for many other YouTubers and other entities, so I figured I would give it a shot. I wanted to see before I went into this and started designing all this stuff to see if you were interested in anything like that. And if you are, let me know what kinds of things you'd like to see on these items and what kind of items you've seen that other YouTubers are creating that you think would be good purchases from the channel here. So let me know, just trying to come up with different ideas for things to bring in revenue to the channel without turning this into an infomercial. I'm very mindful of that. I'm trying to find as many different revenue opportunities as possible, and I just wanted to see if there was interest in that moving forward. So what do we got this week? Lots of cool stuff as usual. We're going to take a look at something called the Vimble, and this is an iPhone-only product. It is a handheld gimbal. It actually works pretty nicely for the iPhone 6 and 6S. That's it. It doesn't work with Android phones or anything else, so I apologize for that. But it is pretty nice. It's got an Apple kind of price tag to it, but it will be something worth taking a look at. I was playing with it all weekend. And then today I got this thing in. This is called the Goal, and it is a little computer, a little Windows computer that has a screen built into it. So you've got a small form factor PC, mini PC, but you've got a screen on it. So when you are at a projector or something like that, you can actually see what's on there. In fact, I've got Windows booted up on it right now. Atom Cherry Trail based. I got the lower end model that I could find here. So this is like the 32 gigabyte version with 2 gigs of RAM. 115 bucks I think is what I paid for it on Indiegogo, and I just got it in today. Looks pretty cool. I'll be putting it through its paces and reviewing it. It runs Android too, which is pretty cool. So we'll be looking at that as well. And this weekend I hope to get to our low-cost Intel build, and what we're going to do is build it on a test bench, which I think will help better visualize the process of building a PC. So you won't see me stuffing components into a box. We'll have them just out here in the open with this test bench, which gives us a more of an open air approach to it. Building PCs is very easy now, at least comparatively to how it was 20 years ago when I first started doing it. And what we're going to do with this Intel setup is start with no GPU, see how it performs with a bunch of games and graphics tests, and then try out a couple of low-cost GPUs from PNY that they sent over a few weeks ago, just to see what you can get out of a very low-cost entry point into building your own PC. And then what we'll do probably a few weeks after that is get some of the new mid-range GPUs. There's new mid-range, pretty powerful GPUs from both AMD and Nvidia. We'll put those in and compare those to having the lower-cost GPU and no GPU at all, and just kind of see what the range is for what your money will get you. This will be kind of a fun little thing we'll do off and on over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. I just need to get some more time to get all those things done and in there. It's been a very busy summer, actually, so I'm squeezing everything in, sometimes late at night to get everything in. And I'm also getting in this week a 17-inch gaming laptop from Lenovo. This is running with a GTX 980M, and we'll see how this one compares to the one we looked at last year. And this does not have the new 1080 chips on there, though, which we're going to see in a bunch of other gaming laptops coming very soon. So I do hope to get some of those in too, but we'll see what Lenovo has up their sleeve with that big monster there. Now, if you want to help the channel, you can. You can go to Lon.TV/Patreon and make a monthly contribution to the channel. We're getting very close to beginning our LLC here and hiring our part-time help. I also take one-time contributions at Lon.TV, and if you do contribute via the YouTube fan funding at Lon.TV, please let me know, because I don't often often hear from people when they do contribute, and I want to put you on the list. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't tell me when they do it, so please let me know so I can make sure you get your spot on the credit roll at the end of the month there. And of course, you can engage with the channel on my email list at Lon.TV/email. We got the Facebook page. I do a lot on Facebook these days, so definitely check that out at Lon.TV/Facebook. We got the Reddit at Lon.TV/Reddit, and the store where I sell a lot of the items that I buy and then get rid of, and I do that through the store. And this one, when I'm done with it, will definitely be up on there because I've got plenty of mini PCs around the house, and you'll be able to pick this up at a pretty good price because it will be used, but very lovingly used. I might take it apart though, but I will make sure it works before I send it over to you. And that will do it for this week's weekly wrap-up. I want to thank all of you for your continued viewership and support. Please keep those questions and comments coming. I do read every one of them, even if I don't always reply to them. I am definitely always eager to hear what you have to say, and it always makes my channel better in the process, so please keep all that coming, and definitely keep watching. We're up to 103,000 subscribers now. We're on our way to 200K, and I still haven't heard about my silver play button yet from YouTube. I'm going to give them another week or two before I email them and say, hey, I got a spot on my shelf for it. I'm eager to get my hands on it. I don't think we're going to see it until probably like November, but I will keep you posted on that. We'll do an unboxing when it comes in. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.